Imagine discovering that the government has legally rewritten your entire identity.
Right, like your lineage, your history, your original name, all of it just sealed in a vault by a court order.
Exactly. And in some places, it is actually a criminal offense for you to even access your own information.
Which is just staggering when you really think about
It
it.
really is. So you are holding this modified state-issued document that legally erases your origins. And when you try to speak about this objective, undeniable reality, a wellness guru looks you in the eye and tells you that your only real problem is your negative attitude.
Yeah, they tell you that you just need to, journal about your feelings and change your mindset.
It sounds completely absurd when you frame it that way.
It does, but that is the exact collision we are unpacking today, Freenu. We're looking at how a culture obsessed with internal healing completely short-circuits when it encounters a harm that was inflicted externally, legally, and, well, permanently by the state.
Welcome in, everyone. Today's source material is truly profound. We are diving into an essay draft titled, "A Modified Birth Certificate is Not a Mood."
Such a powerful title.
Really is. But we are also analyzing the actual, real-life internet comment thread that sparked its creation. Our mission today is to look at what happens when the relentless positivity of modern wellness culture crashes headfirst into the heavy, stamped, paper trail reality of state-sanctioned identity revocation.
The sources reveal this fascinating and, frankly, chilling mechanism. We get to watch a very generic piece of internet self-help advice suddenly escalate into a massive debate.
Right. It goes from, transform your thoughts to this intense discussion about basic human rights, sealed court orders, and the architecture of silence that protects institutions from accountability.
To really grasp the weight of the essay's argument, though, we need to look at the spark.
Yeah, we have to go to the specific comment thread where this mindset philosophy broke down in real time.
So the source material points us to a post on the platform Medium by an author named Bill Abbott. The post is called Our Inner World, and the premise is absolute classic wellness culture.
Classic.
Yeah.
He writes that the heaviest weight isn't the world on your shoulders. It is in your mind. The message is basically transform your thoughts and you transform yourself. Your inner world is your sanctuary.
And, on the surface, that framework is deeply appealing.
Sure, it sounds great.
Right. If your stress is caused by a bad day at work, a traffic jam, or a temporary interpersonal conflict, retreating to your inner world to re-regulate your nervous system is highly effective.
It gives the individual this illusion of total control.
Exactly. But then a commenter named Thoughtless Delineation, or TD for short, enters the chat. And TD brings a completely different reality to the table.
Which changes everything. TD argues that this entire premise, this whole idea of the inner world as a self-regulating haven, is built on profound, unexamined structural privilege.
Yes. TD points out that the wellness author is making a massive assumption here. He is assuming the reader has an intact legal foundation.
Right.
He's assuming your legal identity, your lineage, and your basic selfhood were never forcibly revoked or rewritten or commodified by a state apparatus.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I was trying to find a way to conceptualize this as I was reading the sources, and it struck me that it's like a computer operating system.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, like wellness culture is basically offering you a new meditation app to download.
Yeah.
And that app works great, if your operating system is healthy.
Right, it runs smoothly.
But TD is saying, my core code, the fundamental operating system of my legal identity, was overwritten by an external administrator without my permission.
Wow, yeah.
No matter how many positive mindset apps you install, the system is always going to crash because the foundational code itself is corrupted. You can't fix a core code overwrite with a user interface update.
What's fascinating here is that that's an incredibly precise way to map the problem. When the harm is executed in the physical, legal world, telling the person to steward their nervous system is a fundamental misdiagnosis.
It really is.
You just cannot meditate your way out of a structural nullification.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second, though.
Okay.
I can imagine someone listening and thinking, well, isn't the wellness guy just trying to be pragmatic? Like, if the state altered your document decades ago and you can't magically unseal it today, isn't he just offering a survival mechanism?
Right, like focus on what you can control.
Exactly. Focus on your internal reaction because that's all you have left. Why is that such a toxic offering?
It looks like a pragmatic survival mechanism until you examine what it actually demands of the person experiencing the harm. It demands that they actively sanitize external systemic violence into a purely internal psychological exercise.
So it's shifting the burden entirely.
Yes, it asks the victim to take the full weight of a state-sanctioned action and carry it entirely in their own nervous system.
Which brings us to the absolute most jaw-dropping moment in the source material. TD lays out this very articulate argument about institutions commodifying identity.
And how does the author of the Wellness Post reply to the reality of altered legal documents?
I still can't believe this part. He literally writes back, quote, "And that is your internal world," end quote.
Just incredible.
I'll stare at that sentence for a long time. The author is confronted with the literal existence of stamped, sealed government files, and he categorizes them as an internal emotion.
And that specific interaction is the central thesis of the essay we are exploring today. The author states plainly, a modified birth certificate is not a mood.
It's really not.
The erasure of lineage by registries, by courts, by welfare departments, this is an objective administrative reality. It's enforced with the exact same seriousness as a property title.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you own a house and someone at the county clerk's office alters the deed to say you don't own it, nobody would tell you that the altered deed is just part of your internal world.
No, absolutely not. That is a legal crisis.
It's a fact with a paper trail. You can literally walk into a government building, go down to the basement, and bump your knee on the locked filing cabinet that holds the sealed record. That is not a feeling.
Right.
But I want to dig into the why here. Why would a presumably well-meaning wellness author look at a government filing cabinet and call it a feeling? What is the psychological mechanism that causes someone to so reflexively mislabel a fact as an emotion?
Well, it comes down to a deep existential terror. Acknowledging that systemic, unfixable harm exists is terrifying for the average person.
Oh, for sure.
If the wellness author admits that the state can legally erase someone's foundational identity and replace it, he has to admit that the world is inherently unsafe and that his own foundation might be fragile.
So by pushing this mindset is everything narrative, he isn't actually trying to protect or heal the adoptee at all.
No, not really.
He is protecting his own worldview. He's protecting himself from the terrifying realization that some problems simply cannot be journaled away.
Precisely. Because if the problem is all in your head, then the world remains safe and orderly.
Why?
But this defense mechanism has devastating systemic consequences. When culture sanitizes this violence into a psychological exercise, it doesn't just fail to heal the adoptee, it actively lets the responsible institutions completely off the hook.
Because nobody is looking at them anymore.
Exactly. Think about where the transform your thoughts model quietly redirects accountability. It takes the focus entirely away from the registry that sealed the record. It takes the heat off the court that issued the order.
And it places all that accountability squarely onto the shoulders of the person whose identity was modified in the first place.
Yes. Just imagine the embodied physical toll of that. Imagine standing there with your history legally severed by a judge and society's response is, hey, have you tried doing some breath work?
It is enforced gaslighting. It's an entire culture telling you not to trust the paper in your own hands.
Which is why the climax of the comment thread is so revealing. Faced with TD pointing out that a modified document is not a mood, the wellness author reached for a very specific word to shut down the conversation entirely.
Oh, right.
He replied, sounds like you think in terms of victimhood.
Victimhood. I really want to stop and look at that word because TD fires back with a brilliant response. I think in terms of basic human rights.
Such a good response.
But wait, why does wellness culture treat the word victim as a dirty word? Isn't victim just a factual description of someone who has suffered an external harm?
Right.
If I am walking down the street and a piano falls on my head, I am the victim of a falling piano. It is a material fact. Why does acknowledging a factual harm suddenly become a character flaw when it comes to adoption and identity revocation?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we move from individual psychology to institutional architecture.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The essay introduces this concept called the architecture of silence. In this context, the word victimhood is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting. It is not a neutral descriptive noun.
What is it then?
It is a rhetorical maneuver. Its entire purpose is to relocate a structural grievance into the register of personal pathology.
It turns a legal crime into a personality quirk.
Exactly. Suddenly, the focus of the conversation shifts entirely. The problem is no longer that the state erased your lineage.
Right.
The problem is that you haven't softened your feelings about it. You haven't outgrown your anger. You, the claimant, are now treated as the problem.
And magically, the massive state apparatus that actually produced the harm disappears from the frame entirely.
Poof, gone.
That is such a sinister magic trick. And the essay points out something fascinating about how this architecture of silence operates. It doesn't require every single institution to actively lie or shred documents or cover its tracks in some smoky back room.
No, it is much more efficient than that.
It is incredibly efficient. Institutional concealment only requires enough of the surrounding culture to treat the disclosure of harm as a character issue rather than a factual one.
Yes. If the culture automatically silences the person bringing the receipts, the institution never has to defend itself.
Let's compare the two sides of that interaction just to make it really clear. The forced adoption survivor saying, "The state sealed my original birth certificate," is presenting a fact. They have a paper trail.
Right. Objective evidence.
But the wellness author responding with, "Sounds like you think in terms of victimhood," is presenting a deflection. And that deflection requires zero evidence.
Not at all.
It has no paper trail. It only needs to be said with enough unearned confidence to trigger society's discomfort and end the conversation.
It acts as a conversational kill switch. And for adoptees navigating this reality, that kill switch is deployed constantly by people who think they are helping.
So what does this all mean? If treating this as a personal pathology is the deflection, then what does actual accountability look like in the physical world?
We have to shift our focus.
Right. If the mindset approach is fundamentally the wrong tool, what is the right tool? We have to move from identifying the silence to looking at the required solution.
We do. And it is important to note the nuance in the source essay here. The author is not anti-therapy.
Important caveat.
The essay explicitly states that nervous systems matter and stewardship of one's own mind is not nothing. Interior work has value.
Right. Nobody is saying you shouldn't go to therapy to process trauma. The issue is treating therapy as the whole of the claim.
Yes, treating interior work as the entire solution is where the harm compounds.
Because a sealed government file does not magically unseal itself just because you reached a state of inner peace on a yoga mat.
This raises an important question about where accountability truly lies and brings us to the post-tragic turn of this entire framework.
A post-tragic lens.
Yes. A post-tragic lens is clear-eyed about the harm. It refuses to despair, but it absolutely refuses to offer false, upbeat platitudes.
Which is so refreshing.
It recognizes that the actual site of transformation is not the therapist's couch. It is the legislative floor. True transformation happens when the physical record itself is amended.
The essay mentions some specific legal barriers here that I think we really need to unpack for everyone listening, because they sound incredibly dense, but they represent real life for a lot of people.
Well, let's get into them.
You mentioned earlier that the actual tools needed are external legal tools. The essay specifically calls out things like contact vetoes and statutory gaps like the employment-only carve-out. Let's break those down. What is a contact veto in this context?
A contact veto is a deeply invasive legal mechanism. In many jurisdictions, even if an adult adoptee is finally permitted to obtain their original birth certificate, the state allows the biological parent to file a legal veto that makes it a criminal offense for the adoptee to contact them.
Wait, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
You're saying that an adult can be criminalized by the state simply for reaching out to the people who brought them into the world?
Yes. The state enforces a gag order on the adoptee's own biology. It is a profound restriction on freedom of association, uniquely applied to this demographic.
That is staggering. I mean, truly staggering. And what about the other term the essay mentions, the employment-only carve-out regarding social origin discrimination?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for someone's daily life?
Well, this gets to the heart of how human rights law often fails this community. Social origin is a protected class in many human rights frameworks, meaning you cannot be discriminated against based on where or who you come from.
Makes sense.
However, the essay highlights that in certain jurisdictions, the protections against social origin discrimination only apply to employment. They are carved out or excluded from other areas, like the provision of goods, services, or housing.
Meaning what exactly? Like, give me a real-world scenario.
It means that if an institution, perhaps a religious or private entity, decides to deny an adoptee a service or access to records or even inherited property specifically because of their altered lineage or adoption status, the adoptee might have zero recourse under human rights law. The law has a built-in blind spot that permits discrimination based on their modified identity everywhere outside of the workplace.
Wow. So when the wellness author tells the adoptee to just transform their thoughts, he is asking them to individually meditate away the reality of state-enforced gag orders and legally sanctioned discrimination.
Exactly.
It's a terrifying realization of just how heavily institutions rely on us to look inward so we don't look upward at them.
Which is precisely why the source material demands honest adoption language. We must treat the adoptee experience not as a trauma pathology that needs curing by a life coach, but as an administrative expertise.
An administrative expertise. That's a powerful way to frame it.
It is, because adoptees are navigating a labyrinth of legal erasure that most of the population cannot even fathom. When we use honest language terms like state-sanctioned identity revocation instead of adoption trauma, we place the accountability exactly where it belongs, on the institutions and the legislation.
That framing completely reorganizes how I think about systemic justice. It draws a hard, bright line between what we can heal internally as individuals and what we must collectively correct externally as a society.
It's vital.
I really want you, listening to us right now, to take a moment with this. Think about the sheer relief of being told, this is not in your head. This is in a filing cabinet.
It is a profound shift in perspective. The inner world is absolutely real and it deserves care. But as the author of the essay so powerfully concludes, the inner world is just not where the birth certificate lives.
The inner world is not where the birth certificate lives.
Yeah.
That line just anchors the whole thing for me.
It really does.
So, to recap the journey we've taken today in this deep dive, we started with what looked like a harmless, cliché wellness comment thread.
Right.
Transform your thoughts to transform you. But by applying a systemic lens to that exchange, we uncovered a deeply entrenched architecture of silence. We saw how culture acts as a shield, protecting state-sanctioned identity revocation by mislabeling valid, document-based structural grievances as personal victimhood.
We moved from the illusion that a mindset shift cures all to the concrete reality that a modified government document requires a legislative document-level solution.
Exactly.
We learned that while nervous systems matter, the paper trail matters just as much when dealing with legal erasure.
I highly recommend seeking out the full essay draft. It provides even more depth on this dynamic, exploring the intricate ways institutions benefit from our culture's obsession with individual mindset.
It's definitely a must-read.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. Something to really mull over as you go about the rest of your week.
The application of this goes far beyond this single issue.
It really does. If our culture so easily and so reflexively mislabels a sealed government birth certificate as a mere mood just to avoid discomfort and maintain a sense of safety, what other legally enforced systemic harms in our society are we currently prescribing meditation and journaling for?
Sobering question.
When someone tells you to just change your perspective about a structural problem, whose liability are they actually protecting? Because as we've learned today, sometimes the problem really isn't your mindset. Sometimes the problem is locked in a filing cabinet at the county courthouse, and the only way to fix it is to change the law. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the foundation, and we'll see you next time.